Hi, welcome to One Eye on the Page. I am Scott. It is the weekly wrap up for the week of the 13th through the 19th of November. Let's go ahead and get started. This week I finished 3 books. It's pretty good, but my history this month has been 7 books, 5 books, 3 books. Going this route here, it looks like next week I will finish 1 book. I should finish much more than 1 book next week because next week is Thanksgiving week. So I will have plenty of time to read. The first book that I finished this week is Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. One of those books that I went into my Audible Plus account, saw what was available because at the time I didn't have any credit, so I picked a book that looked interesting. It is about a man. His hand is damaged in some way, uh, and he is a king's son. He's a prince, but because of his physical deformity, which apparently people in his kingdom put a high stock on, they don't think much of him. He has an older brother who is in line to be the king. He is studying to be a minister, which appears to be both a minister's job and like a spiritual advisor, I would guess, because it appears that ministers also have to take vows of celibacy or, well, they don't have relationships after they become a minister. So, however, his father and his brother are killed. So he is supposed to be made the king. He goes to not he goes, I mean, he does, but he's more kind of pushed into doing it to take vengeance on who they believed killed his father and brother. He is betrayed and killed, or at least they thought they killed him. He actually is not killed, pretends to be somebody else, is sold into slavery, and then it's his quest to get back to have vengeance on the people who have betrayed him. And it is obviously a fantasy book. I don't read as many fantasy books as I did. You can see my cats in the background there fighting. Xander, just go away. You know you're going to lose. I don't read as many fantasy books as I did when I was a much younger man. I thought overall this was a pretty good book. I will say that I often read about books that I'm about to read, see what other people say about it. There is a character in here who goes by the name Nothing, or that's the name that he is given. That is the name he is given. And he seems to be quite a fan favorite. I have to say, I do not appreciate him as much as other people do, but I think the reason I don't appreciate him as much as other people do is because he is quite the fantasy character. And I don't think I have as much appreciation for those type of characters as other people who read fantasy books quite a bit. He is like, steel is the answer and death comes for us all kind of guy. And it's like, oh, okay, he's a walking cliche. And I finished the book. I still think he's a walking cliche. I understand why other people will like him. I like some of the other characters in here more. Uh, Terrible with names, especially fantasy names. And they're not all major characters. So, but yeah, a lot of the characters I like are the sidekicks in here. I do think it is a good book. It talks about the politics and basically the minister job is to pick the lesser of two evils, whereas maybe a king just their job, at least in this setting, is strength. I had more to say about this, but the cats are driving me insane, so I have to move the camera a little bit so I don't have to let you see Wash dominating Xander over there. All right, so especially for a fantasy book, I think this is pretty good. I'm going to give it a 4 star. It is the first book in a trilogy, I believe. I have to be honest, I don't know that I plan to read the trilogy, even though the first book was very good. Just one, even though the main character here is in those books, he's not necessarily the focus of them in just a me thing. I am not personally a huge fan of series that change the main character to somebody else. It's a personal thing. Like I said, he's still in it. He still apparently plays quite a prominent part, at least in the second book. But as of right now, I haven't made any plans to read that book. The second book I read, because I got a credit, and I was driving to drop my kid off at the airport, which meant I had, because of where I am, the airport that goes to where they need to go is a bit of a distance away. So I needed to read a book that was relatively short, but not like a novella. So I used my credit and I got John Scalzi's Starter Villain. Basically, a young man, his uncle is a villain, and there's debate in the book about what exactly a villain is, but his uncle has died of natural causes, and he is told that he is the heir to his uncle's everything, money, the villain companies and everything. And of course, he has enemies too now. And basically, he is brought into this company and basically like, okay, you just found out this today, just found out this yesterday, and now you have to make decisions about all these things. The young man, Charlie, he also has cats, which we find out, slight spoiler, but you can see from the cover of the book the cats play a big part. The cats are smart; they can communicate with the keyboard, so they're genetically modified animals. And basically, Charlie, who used to be a business reporter, but because of layoffs is now substitute teaching, is thrown into this billionaire's world, and there are assassins and dolphins and volcanoes, and it's basically him trying to survive in this world with people who essentially think that they can play him for a patsy. Is that true? I will say I did like the book. It did do a trope that I really dislike in books, where somebody is thrown into a circumstance that they were not aware of before. It, it could be as simple as, "You're a wizard, Harry." And they are expected to know everything about this and to make decisions about this. And people are very impatient with them. It wasn't so much in the Harry Potter books, of course, but in this book, it's like Matilda, the woman who introduces him to this world is basically like, "Come on, Charlie," and it's like he found this shit out 24 hours ago. Give him a break. I really, really dislike that trope. It's very silly to me. Uh, to be fair, the entire book is silly in a good way. A lot of it is meant to be silly. I also, as I said, while I was driving to the airport, so I listened to it. It's narrated by Will Wheaton. He really gets into it. I don't know much about him elsewhere as a narrator, but I know he does quite a few John Scalzi books, and that he seems suited to them at the very least. So I don't know if there's gonna be a sequel to this. I when I was looking stuff up, I saw something like in a Google search that seemed to suggest there might be, but I didn't research it. If there is, I will probably reread it. I will probably read it. I like John Scalzi. This is my first John Scalzi book this year, but I read 7 last year. I hadn't read any before that. But I generally enjoy his writing. I also tend to prefer him when he writes more comically. Uh, I did enjoy the books in the Old Man of War saga that I wrote, but they're more science fiction based, not a lot of humor in it. And I prefer this book and Red Shirts, and I think the Locked In series are still pretty humorous too. And I haven't read anything else, so I can't. No, I read one other thing, but it was a long time ago, and I probably have the name wrong, but the title reminds me of the Star Trek Tribbles series, so it's something like that. I'll probably put it down here. I give this one a 4. And the last book that I completed was the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. It's a lot of stuff that I generally don't like. It's an epistolary novel written in the form of letters. Usually not a big fan of those. It's also a lot about religion. I am agnostic. I don't often read much pro religion fiction. Not really something I look for. If I do read about religion, I usually read the religious books themselves, the Bible or the Book of Mormon or the Quran, more just for my knowledge, or books about religions themselves. As far as fiction, religion, no. And C.S. Lewis is obviously a very Christian writer. I did read his book on grief a few years ago. I did like that, but this one is definitely very religion based. It is Screwtape, who is a basically a bureaucrat in hell, talking to his nephew, who is like a lower level demon who is responsible for bringing one young man to the devil as opposed to God, the enemy, as they say in the book. And it's basically him telling his nephew, Wormwood, what he needs to do and about how people fall away from the enemy. And it's interesting in itself, and it's quite short too, but uh, I just don't think that the subject matter in, let's be honest, the time frame that was written in how a writer like C.S. Lewis would look upon religion at the time, I wasn't necessarily the right audience for it. Why'd you read it, Scott? It was very short, and it almost perfectly filled the time that I was driving back from the airport because I had actually listened to some of Starter Villain before going to the airport, so I finished it on the way to the airport, and this one pretty much took the drive back plus a little bit left after that. So, uh, if that is something you're interested in, this probably be a good thing for you. I will be quite honest. I know that C.S. Lewis has written a lot about religion. I think this is pretty much his, I don't know, primer version. It's very uh, entry level into the topic of religion. It's more written on a humorous basis. Some people refer to it as satire, and I don't know that I would call it satire, but it does have a little bit more of a humor edge to it. I appreciate Screwtape's language. It's interesting letters, if a bit basic, and I enjoy how he refers to his dear nephew, well, basically chastising him in almost every letter, and yeah, it was decent. It's a three, and I that a lot of that is just based on the fact that I don't feel like I was the particular audience for this book. Now I'm still reading Girlflesh. It's just going slowly. I'm 100 pages in. I think I may have been close to 100 pages last time I did this. It's just it's dragging. The way it's written is dragging. It's supposed to be an extreme horror novel. Not anything there yet. So, I mean, I'm also reading Wildwood Road by Christopher Golden. I may have read one chapter this week. Again, I'm going to be on vacation. So, I expect to finish at least Girlflesh, at least Wildwood Road, at least Hobgoblin by John Coyne, which I'm actually I believe I'm about 100 pages into that. Whereas in Wildwood Road, I think it's like 350 pages. I think Hobgoblin's less than 300 pages. So uh, I am flying on an airplane tomorrow. I expect to have that finished by tomorrow night. Uh, Also reading A Christmas Carol. We have just gotten to the point where the Ghost of Christmas Past has presented the Fezziwig party. Uh, in my child laughs every time because the fellow apprentice is named Dick. That's where I'm at. And of course, my child is not with me now because they are going to spend Thanksgiving with their mother. So we're going to be doing this through FaceTime this week. What else am I reading? Well, I also have the book Brother, which is another extreme horror book, which I will only start if I finish Girlflesh. So I expect to start it this week, but I am reading The Gold Bat by P.G. Wodehouse because I am trying to finish up Wodehouse books for me to be able to do 5 Year Battle. It's a school story, so it's a lot about cricket and football and young dudes talking about sports and Woodhouse not really being in his comic prime yet. So it's kind of a slow process. I don't think that I am listening to anything else now. I will be listening to another audiobook uh, this week, but I haven't picked it out yet. So that is the weekly wrap up for this week. I expect next week, after Thanksgiving, I will have more books to go over. I will hopefully have completed some books that, I don't know how long Girlflesh has been out there, but I know Hobgoblin and Wildwood Road have basically been since the 1st of October, and it's November 19th. I'm really dragging. And it's not like I'm not reading, because I read, 21 books in October, and I've read 15 so far here in November. So 36 books in basically 6 weeks. So I'm reading, I'm just not finishing the ones that I've been reading for so long. So, do you have any book procrastination yourself? Tell me, what is the book that you're still reading that you're not DNFing, but you're just taking forever to get through it? I will say happy Thanksgiving, but this will probably won't go up until a day or two after Thanksgiving. So happy belated Thanksgiving. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I will talk to you next time.